Welcome to the Backstage Creative. My name is Krista Copper. On this podcast, I interview the people who work behind the scenes of theater, people who design and work in the costume shop and play instruments and music direct and choreograph and stage manage and run the mixing board in the back and do carpentry and work on the technical side of things. All of the people who work so hard and bring so much artistry into creating live theatrical productions. Today is my conversation with Nia Sciaretta. Nia is a stage manager, and we have worked together in the past. We did a production of 9 to 5, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. I think 9 to 5 is just, it's so well written. The music is great. The storyline is fantastic. It's funny. It's relevant. I think it has all the qualities of what makes a show timeless and enjoyable and relevant. If you like the Backstage Creative, I would love it if you would head on over to Facebook and like the Backstage Creative podcast page. That's where I post like kind of unofficial show notes. If a guest that I've interviewed has a website, that's where I post their website so you can check out work that they've done. That's also where I post when new episodes come out. You can also subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can leave a rating or a review. That would be fantastic. A lot of ways that you can show support for this show. Thank you for listening. There are so many podcasts out right now. There's so much music. There's so many Netflix shows and Amazon Prime and Hulu, and there's so many things that you could be listening to and consuming right now. And so I'm just so grateful that you're listening to this show. It does mean a lot to me. So thank you. Here we go. Here's my conversation with Nia Sciaretta. Tell us about your Nia Explains It All videos. What are those for? I've had a lot of fun watching them. I think you do such a great job with them. How did they get started? What are they for? All of that stuff.
Absolutely. I feel super weird about them because I am not, and nor have I ever wanted to be really a performer. They started up right after we had to shut down the theater. We were very much trying to find ways to keep connecting outwards and to keep kind of waving at people and saying, we're still here, we're still doing things. Just because we can't open our doors and go into the theater doesn't mean that we're not still active. So I actually got a phone call from the Asolo Rep education director, and she said she had been sitting in her house and her husband had been talking to her about something that was a theater term, and she had the idea of being like, we need someone to explain theater terms, and she's the education director, so she automatically kind of took it to an education place, and she thought of me. And so she called and asked me, and at that point I wanted to find ways to be helpful, and so I said yes, and then was faced with, how do I do this? And having a YouTube segment is never a thing that I have wanted, but it's really fun to put together. It's fun to think about what terms people might not know or what things they may not know as much about. There's so much in theater that's neat and that is hidden and is kind of fun because it's hidden. So I've had a good time, even as I've felt weird about being a performer for the first time, really.
Yeah. I feel the same way when I have to play on stage. I'm like, this isn't I want to be in the pit.
Yeah, I both want them to be watched because I want them to be useful and I want I want to contribute, but I also, every time a friend is like, oh yeah, I didn't watch the last episode, I'm like, great, that's fine, that's ideal. If these could only be watched by people who I've never met before, that would be perfect.
So do you think of all the terms yourself? Are you like brainstorming with other people? How do you come up with the topics for each video?
Sure. At the very beginning, the education and engagement department kind of brainstormed a big list and sent them to me. But beyond that, they've kind of given me a lot of kind of creative control in what I do. And so sometimes I pick something off the list. Sometimes it's something that I'm thinking about, or I know that we have a good video from a past performance that might help with something, or I have a fun idea, and so I'm really able to kind of go off on my own and make my end of it happen. I write the script for it. I pick the term. I write the script. I gather the content, and we have a great department who's able to help find video and find video that we are allowed to put on the internet, which is not always the same thing. And so I kind of create what I think it should be, and then I send stick it in a Dropbox and send it off. And originally the education department was putting them together, and now I think the marketing department is helping out and putting the videos together. So it's a team effort, but on the back end of it, it's just me in my apartment thinking of things that I think would be fun.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people who put together like really quality videos, because like graphics and different clips and all of the editing, like that takes a lot of work. So it's good that you have a team.
I do. I feel lucky because I get to do kind of the fun part of, and I'm sure that other people think other parts are the fun part, but the intro to it is a lot of fun. And they were like, I don't know, like take some videos, that are 3 to 5 seconds around your house. And so I did it and I sent it off, and then they made it into this like beautiful, charming intro that everyone loves, and I had almost nothing to do with.
It's just a different way for a theater to connect with an audience. I mean, I follow a lot of different theaters on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot, and most of the stuff they have coming out right now is actors performing or whatnot, which is fine. But I like how this is a little different, and it's educational, it's engaging. They're super short videos. I really love the creativity behind it and how it's just different than what other theaters are doing. So
It's fun. It's fun. I've used it a lot as a way to pick moments that I thought were exciting, or that that I wanted to tell a story about, and then be able to use it to explain how that happened. And so a lot of the moments that have come up in the videos are moments that I already want to tell people about, that are already kind of in the legends of past performances that we've done. And then beyond that, because we have other smart people, working at the theater, our education and engagement director, has been working on how do we put this into language that makes sense in schools, and can we insert it into, or can we make it so that it works within curriculums that already exist, because schools are having to deal with going online and having to deal with having to come up with content of their own in ways that they haven't previously. And so I know that we're working on creating activities to go along with the videos, and creating ways to use them and incorporate them into curriculums.
that's so great. Like a theater giving back to the community instead of asking, just always being the one asking for money and support, but actually like giving something to the community that they're in. And that's so great.
It's good. It's important, and it's interesting that a lot of this has come along because we're struggling to do the thing that we're good at and that we're used to doing. And so we've
Hmm.
had to find other ways to connect, and there have been some really neat things to come out of that, I think.
Hmm. Have you heard back from like many patrons about the videos?
Some I hear back from a lot of parents. I know that there was a week where an episode didn't come out, and one of my friends contacted me and said, "Why is there no episode this week? My mother wants to know." So some of it is that. Uh, I know, again, that there are a few teachers who we're working with specifically who have been using the videos. And so I think they've been doing giving a lot of the feedback. And every once in a while we'll put it up, and a patron will respond back to say, "Oh, I saw the show that you have a clip of in there. That was really fun," or "That reminds me of a different show that I saw once upon a time." And it's neat to have it be not only educational, but also be a reminder of when we could do shows, and be a reminder of fun times that we've had in the theater before.
Yeah, for sure. I was so excited when I first saw those videos coming out on Facebook. I was like, this is such a great idea. So you guys are doing a really great job with it.
Thank you. I'm glad. I feel so strange about them, but am really excited that they've kind of found a home.
Yeah, you're well on your way to becoming YouTube famous, Nia. Watch out.
If you told me a year ago we'd be here, I would not have believed you.
Yeah, me either. I don't know if anyone would have believed it.
Well, no, no.
Awesome. So take us through your background, where you're from, how you got into theater and stage managing, and how you got to Florida.
Sure. So I'm originally from Warwick, New York. It's about an hour and a half out of New York City. So I was close enough to go into the city and see shows when I was a kid, but it definitely wasn't something that we did terribly regularly. I got into theater, and I know that I've just told you how I'm not a performer at all, but I got into theater originally by being in the middle school shows. I was never particularly good. I was always cast as like woman number one, where where they would be like, you're not a great singer or dancer or actor, but you seem to really like being here and you have a loud voice, is more or less what I got. And they were like, you can have one line, but no name. And I was thrilled because I didn't really like singing or dancing or acting. I just really liked being in the room. And in middle school, that acting was the way to do that. I didn't know of any other way. And so I think early in high school, I auditioned for a show and didn't get in and kind of went, well, I can't not do this for a year. I'll just find a different way to be involved. And so I started stage managing and immediately was like, oh, this is all of the good parts with none of that pesky acting or dancing or singing. Like, this is clearly where I need to be. So from there, I stuck with it. Stage management both plays to my strengths and also lets me do the things that I think are fun. And so I went to college for it at Ithaca College in upstate New York and had a wonderful time. My first apprenticeship after I graduated college was at Asolo Rep, where I am now. And so 22-year-old me came down here and I was an apprentice on a musical and had a wonderful time and really connected with the woman who was the PSM down here at the time. And then I went away for a little bit, did some other, worked other places. I lived in New York for 5 or 6 years. I've, worked other places regionally in summer stock. But pretty quickly after I got my equity card, I started coming back down to Asolo Rep, not for full seasons, but first I came down and I was the assistant stage manager on some of the musicals. And so I'd be down here, once a year, and then I would be down here twice a year. And then I started stage managing. And so I started stage managing the little shows here. And then I started stage managing in the rep and larger shows. And then my PSM, who I'd been working with for 6 years, was leaving. And she asked me, she said, I don't know if you'd want to do this. I don't know if you would want to leave living in New York, but I am leaving. And if you would like, I'm happy to throw your name in. And I thought about it, and I definitely miss living in New York, but I get to do shows that are fun with people who I really respect, and I get to do so much down here that's hard to do in New York City, or that requires you to have so much experience to get to do it in New York. And so I decided to move down. So I live in Florida now. It's fun and it's crazy, and I don't regret it at all. It's been really exciting. But now I've been here. I'm going into my 9th season overall, and my 3rd season as production stage manager.
You mentioned you like stage managing because there are things in it that you thought were fun. What did you think was fun about stage managing?
I'm someone who just wants to be in the room. I'm kind of creatively adjacent. I like to be around creativity, and there's definitely creativity that exists in stage management as well. But I love to be involved, or I love to be there for the creative conversations, and I like to figure out how to make those things happen. So I'm someone who enjoys being given a problem and then having to figure out how to solve it.
Hmm. How do you prioritize problems? Because I'm sure it's never just like, here's a problem, and then you finish that problem. It's never like neatly one after another. I'm sure there's sometimes where you just get a whole heap of problems. How do you prioritize problems that come your way?
It's funny because especially as a stage manager, I feel like you always want to, or your first instinct might be to think ahead and say no to things because you know that it might be difficult or might be a problem. And one of the earliest things that I think one of the PSMs that I worked for or worked with said to me was that we had to come from a place of yes. And so it's a lot of how do I look at this and assume that it will work and then figure out all the ways that it might be problematic and fix those, and how do we come from wanting to say yes rather than wanting to say no. I don't know that I have a clear prioritization. Sometimes it's the thing that just comes and hits you and you have to deal with it because otherwise you can't move on. I think that some of it is what is the biggest problem that we can't move on before we fix, and some of it is just trying to get everything get everything done and in order to make things as smooth and easy as they can be. I don't have a good answer.
No, that was a fine answer. Does it ever feel overwhelming? Like you have all of these parts and you have all of these people you're trying to help organize. Putting up a show is a big ordeal, and it takes a lot of different people and pieces. Does it ever feel, or did it ever feel like early on in your career, like how do I like overwhelming?
Yes, it absolutely can feel overwhelming, but at the same time, I think that's some of what's exciting to me. Um, I think that's some of what draws me to it is that there are so many moving pieces and so many things that could go wrong, and there's so much coordination and there's so many people. I think that's part of what makes it fun. What always worries me is the thing that I don't think of. I can plan for anything that I know, and I can think of a lot of things that could happen, and it's always that one thing that I'm afraid I won't think of and that will come back and hit me. But that's also just that's why we work on teams, and that's why there are other people and not just me who are responsible for shows. Yeah, it can be overwhelming, but that's also fun.
Sure. Do you have any like method for organization?
Oh, I'm made of methods for organization.
Yes.
I have a big Dropbox, and I have folders for everything. And so a lot of it is making it look like it's organized and that it ends up actually being organized. At the same time, my desk is always a disaster area. No matter how many times I clean it up, it is always crazy and a mess. And working from home, I've tried to make sure that everything has a place that it lives so that by the end of the day, things are still neat. In rehearsal, I'm a spreader, and so I end up, taking up suddenly I've taken up 3 feet of the 8-foot table that there are supposed to be 4 or 5 stage managers sitting at, and I just don't know how to solve it. We just started adding on other tables to the end of the table because I am no longer capable of taking up less than 2 or 3 feet. So some of it is really genuine organization, and some of it is just faking it until it's true.
Yeah, I always like to talk to people just about how to be organized, and because I don't know, like as a musician, I look at like designers and stage managers, I'm like, how do they keep all of that straight? And directors, like what? Like it's a lot of information and a lot of paper and
I take a lot of notes, and we've been working from home, and I'm involved in a lot of meetings. And every time we get to the end of a meeting, and someone's like, "Oh, I wish I'd written down this, that, or the other," I've just taken to kind of holding up my notes and being like, "I have this." And so I've been, taking meeting minutes, and I've been distributing, and I've become the de facto note taker for a lot of things because part of listening and understanding information for me is taking notes on it. And so if I can't trust my brain, I can always trust that my notebook has everything written in it.
so talk to us about working on a repertory schedule. What are some of the things that you like about doing shows in rep, and maybe what are some of the challenges that you have to contend with?
A lot of the things that I like about it are that it's hard and it stretches your brain in a different way than other things do. Rep is something that I've done here at Asolo Rep a decent amount. I did it Creed Rep. I think it forces you to be organized in ways that regular shows don't necessarily. And I think you get you get to watch people do really extraordinary things. It's really something to watch the actors be forced to use their brains in ways that they maybe don't always. It's interesting to watch the crew and all of the changeovers and all of the pieces that go into rep. It's everything that's involved in regular theater, but more so, really. And it really makes you have to do all of the troubleshooting. If one little thing goes wrong, it doesn't just have ripples in one show, it can have ripples in multiple. It's a lot of what we do, but more so. Part of why I went into theater, I think, is that every day is different, and that you can never quite predict what the next day will be, and it doesn't matter how organized you are or how much you think ahead, there is always a surprise. And I think rep turns that up to a degree. If a show is open and running for 2 months, 3 months, and you're doing it every day, that's fun, and it's live theater, so things will always change. But being able to walk into the theater and have it be a different show from day to day just adds something to it, adds a little bit more excitement, adds a little bit more of that kind of, it's not spontaneity, but you don't know what's coming next, and it's fun. And sometimes we get deep into the rep season. I had an apprentice one year who was working on, I think, all 3 of the rep shows we were doing at that point. A few weeks into that, he looked at me and was just like, I've stopped looking at the calendar. I just walk into the theater every day and see what set is up, and then that's so. And it's nice. It's nice. It keeps your brain thinking, and you don't get to go on autopilot. And I think that makes it more fun.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's my experience with rep as well. I think it makes it helps shows feel fresher longer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get kind of that staleness that can sometimes develop after 2 months of doing something.
Yeah. And at the same time, sometimes then you don't do a show for a few days or for a week at a time. And then you come back to it, and you've lost the rhythm somehow, and getting that back can be challenging, but also, keeps your brain working.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that you're a production stage manager. What does that mean? What are the main functions of your job as a PSM?
Sure. In real life or right now?
Let's do real life.
A lot of what I do is stage managing shows. I don't stage manage every show of the season, but I usually get to do 1 or 2 big musicals, and then 1 or 2 shows in the rep. And so a lot of it just is stage management, but I get to do the fun ones. Not all of the fun ones, but a lot of the fun ones. Outside of that, I am a member of senior staff at this theater, which has been really exciting, and it's really nice to be in the rooms. Again, it's all the same things. I just like being there when things are happening. But it's exciting to be in the rooms where decisions are being made, and to have my voice valued when decisions are made. And so some of that is just going to our, weekly senior staff meetings. Some of that is figuring out, we have an apprentice program, and so we bring in a large percentage of the apprentices we bring in are stage management apprentices. And so figuring out how to make that program valuable to the apprentices who are bringing in, as well as to our theater, which they're wonderful, and so much of what they do is so important. So some of it is that, I'm involved in hiring. It's not just me, but I'm involved in figuring out how do we staff our teams, and what show fits best with which people who are on our team. And some of it is that. I think that right now, when we can't do shows, I've really taken a deeper dive into what are the possible admin sides of this job, and how can I be valuable to this theater when we're not doing shows, which are most of what I usually do. Now, 3 seasons in, or heading into my 3rd season as PSM, I'm starting to really explore what are the other ways that I can contribute to the office, and to the theater, and to the community that way that aren't just stage managing shows really hard.
Mm-hmm. When you're working with apprentices, what are your priorities with them? What are you hoping they get out of the experience? How are you helping them start navigating their career?
I think there's a really important balance where apprentices are here to learn, but there are also people who are incredibly talented and who most of the folks who we hire as apprentices or who we bring in as apprentices, this isn't the first time they've worked for a professional theater. And so I think it's a balance. I think it's a balance between making sure that they are learning, and a lot of learning when it comes to stage management is doing the thing and is putting a certain amount of trust in them. And I think a lot of the apprentices we had a wonderful, wonderful group this past season, and we always do, who contribute so much in ways that are really wonderful. Yeah, the apprentices are really part of the team and working really hard, and hopefully by being involved and by being in these rooms and working with people of the caliber that we're able to bring in, they're I hope that they're getting a lot out of it.
As a musician, you don't really get to learn from anyone like how to play in theater. You're
Hmm.
just kind of like thrown into it. And so I like to hear about, stage managers, and I know designers do that a lot. They'll have like apprentices or associates. And I'm so jealous of people in careers that have those opportunities, because I just like I had to figure it out, and I was terrible for a really long time until because I had no one to watch or no one to learn from. And so
Hmm.
I like to hear about programs that theaters and people have
Hmm.
to help teach the next generation of whatever they're doing.
And there are parts of the program that are explicitly educational. They have, I think, monthly lunch and learns where they talk to specific staff members of Asolo Rep about the different parts of theater. There are some parts of it that are fully, unapologetically didactic. But the same way that my stage management class in college was not anywhere nearly as important as going out and stage managing shows, I think that the parts of the program that are really valuable just come from being in the room and doing the things.
Hmm. Maybe not everybody, but I probably for most people, like doing is the best way to learn how
Hmm.
to do it.
And hopefully, we try to make it a supportive room where there's an opportunity to both take on some responsibility but also be protected and be able to make mistakes and learn from them.
Hmm. So in your job, I would imagine that you're leading a lot of things. You mentioned your senior staff. Talk about leadership. What have you learned about what makes a good leader? How do you try to lead well in your job?
Sure. I think that what's really important to me as a leader is putting trust in other people, and I think that I've worked with some people who come at it from a place of prove to me that you're good enough to be here, and then I will put trust in you. And I think I actively kind of try and do the opposite and come at it from a place of I trust you, I trust that you're doing your best work. The expectation is that you are going to be able to do this, and here's support for it, but coming at it from a place of trust and of the fact that everyone is vital to the team, I think is what I try to do the most. And sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not, and I think a lot of the process of being the resident PSM is trying and then looking back and realizing that I could have done things better, and how do I want to do things better next year. And I think a lot of that is on the leadership side as well, of trying and then realizing that there are things that I can fix and do better next time.
How do you handle when you're trusting people to do their best work, and then they're not delivering? They're not
Mhm.
succeeding at that. What do you do then?
If there is trust and it is not being met, I think very, very rarely is that somebody, especially in the stage management world, it's rare that that is because they are slacking off. and the least interesting thing to me and the least helpful thing to me is yelling at somebody because of it. I think I tend more towards clarifying exactly what the expectations are and figuring out if there are ways to support that I'm not already doing. It's so rare, and it's not impossible, but it's so rare, I think, in the people that I work with, that someone is not living up to things because they don't care or because they don't want to. It's very much kind of figuring out if I'm not being clear in my expectations, or if I'm not supporting in a way that is helpful and necessary. And some of it is bringing it to what someone's current capabilities are. Are they not succeeding because I've asked something that is not within what they're able to do right now? Maybe anyone is able to do right now, and definitely we do hard things, and we're asked to do difficult things. I think I try really hard to kind of add clarity and add support rather than be angry about things.
Yeah, I like that. Stage management is the one job. Well, there's many jobs in theater that I don't really want to do.
Mhm.
Mostly because you have to deal with so many people, and you have to deal with so many egos and personality types and ways of communication. And if people are angry about something, usually they go tell the stage manager. How do you navigate between all of the personalities and egos and um, all the people stuff that you have to get around?
I try to come at things from a place of understanding, or trying to figure out why someone is acting in the way that they are, even if I disagree with the way that they might be bringing something to me. There are definitely moments where I have failures of empathy, but I try really hard not to. And most of the time, if I can figure out what the underlying issue is, I can solve it, or I can at least acknowledge it in a way that makes someone feel heard. And I think a lot of when someone is acting out is either because they don't feel heard, or because of a problem that may not be the one that they're saying out loud to you. Sometimes I can fix it, and if I can, I try to, and sometimes I can't fix it. But I don't know. Sometimes I think the acknowledgement of it is important.
Yeah, just hearing people. I think that's so true. I think a lot of times people just want to be heard. I don't know. I think that's become more and more rare in our society. Like we don't take the time to hear people. Like we're just all like shouting our opinions and articles and
Mhm.
everything at each other. But I think there's a lot of power in hearing people and taking the time to like stop what you're doing and listen.
Yeah, I think that's true.
How do you take care of yourself outside of the theater? Like when things were normal back in the day, so long ago. How did you take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, so that you can go into your job and do it well?
Sure. I mean, at this point, I would take anything. I'm like, I would happily work 1,000 hours tomorrow if it meant I could go do a show.
Yeah.
I think, like a lot of theater folks, uh, work life balance is something that I have not perfected. At the same time, what I've learned about myself is that I do need to take breaks, and I do need to make sure that there is some time that is my time, and making sure that I in a normal rehearsal day, I make sure that I leave on the lunch break, because I know that I will go crazy if I'm just sitting in rehearsal all day long, and not going out and getting some fresh air. And I have the excuse because I have a dog that I have to come home and walk. So so I use that. But some of it is just making sure that I take breaks and that I eat food. And it sounds very simple, and sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. And then from a emotional standpoint, I think it's making sure that I have friends, and that I have people who I can talk to. And if something frustrating happens in a rehearsal day, that's totally fine and normal. And in the moment there, I have to be empathetic and figure out the problem and do the thing. And then, sometimes there's a moment where you just have to go home and shout at your friends and be like, "This was so frustrating." I'll fix it. I'll do the thing, but it's so frustrating right now.
I have such great respect for my friends, especially in theater, who get it, who get why certain things are frustrating, who get why I have certain pet peeves when it comes to dealing with sound engineers and music directors. And so I think those friends are so valuable to have, who get why it's frustrating and don't need like a further explanation of why you're like ranting
Mhm.
hysterically about something that you're mad about. So
Well, in the moment, I think it's so important to kind of be calm and be measured and be able to look at things with empathy and without getting upset, especially in a room where people feel so strongly, and in theater people care a lot, and that's wonderful, and that's a real strength of theater, but also it can make it hard because our emotions are involved. And so being calm and reasonable in the moment is important, but also it's important to have that moment afterward and be able to have feelings.
yeah. I I don't know how I picked this up, but sometimes I'll tell myself like, okay, you can be mad about this, but not right now. Like you can cry about this, but not right now. Like you can feel the things, but right now you can't. And so I think sometimes telling yourself, like acknowledging that you're getting angry, but
Hmm.
um, deferring that anger until and for a few hours later, I think for me at least has been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my final question that I like to ask everyone is advice to young people who want to do what you do.
I mean, I think that's a hard question, especially right now when a lot of it doesn't exist at the moment. Yeah, I think my advice to younger folks trying to get into stage management is to get in the room and do the best that you can do. A lot of this is hard work, but once you're kind of in and going, it's about working and it's about creating relationships, and the people who I respect and want to work with again are the people who care about it, and the people who come in and do their best and acknowledge that they're learning and growing. And you don't have to be perfect, but the effort counts, and caring about it counts to me.
The music for the Backstage Creative was improvised and performed by Ian Leroy, and the logo was designed by Zach Rimbold.